Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where climate change is all the rage, or maybe just rage inducing, or maybe it's just rage against the climate machine. Anyways, let's get into some climate news. First of all, before I actually do that, I'm going to read some articles. I apologize for my bit of a shaky beginning here. Excuse me. I'm going to read some comments, some commentaries from the last video. This one from Physicus. Paused at 5:32 for pseudo-political comment. It's relatively easy to go down a list of elected officials in order to relegate, blame, assign responsibility for this policy or that failed effort. Nixon, also brought into being the EPA. It was Nixon's people that penned Romneycare, which became Obamacare. Nixon's people that wrote that represented the insurance lobby. It is civilization itself that is the cause of climate change. Whilst this policy or that policy may enhance or slow the process, it is certainly that is only incrementally changing anything, i.e. the same end result. The underlying system of decision-making ultimately goes back 400 years or more. Just because the Congress et al. Was formed does not mean the powers that be of that time that spanned the globe already for many centuries went anywhere. We are seeing a much more open view of this today because of Trump and Hillary and Obama and Reagan, etc. Several ex-presidents have spoken of this. One was shot. No, I'm not a conspiracy nut, just stating viewable facts. You can draw your own conclusions as to the connections. Regardless of the persons, the system of civilization demands consumption of biotope. It is humanity's way of life that is to blame. The more comforts and ideologies that species have are results of and a feedback loop for consuming biotope. The elected are the tools of the populace for blame and the providers of consumption for two-sided policy as well as blame. It is the average et al. Who demand this or that way of life for themselves that drives all of it. As long as humans living within a civilization are given excuses to see themselves as superior to other life, birth will be given to the same regardless of one's opinion or belief. Life is spiritual, mystical in its existence regardless of one's belief. Nature is the result of harmony, order from chaos. It is the result of universal love. It is this unbound love that civilization is a barrier to, as well as the cause of the destruction of half of all other life so far. An analogy might be, civilization is a big ship, bigger than the biggest oil tanker ever. It's moving at a rate X. Radar shows an iceberg ahead many miles. Why? The ship's mass is so great that it is already too late to stop before impact. The people start forming opinion groups as to whether to turn right or left. Some outliers say to reverse engines, while others say to speed up and turn with new technology that's being worked on. We have crossed the point where full reverse would avoid the iceberg, and there has not been enough distance at rate X, which has been constantly increasing, to turn for many decades. The most one can do is reduce the energy of impact, stop feeding the furnace. Get out and kick against the force with your feet in the cold or hot water. Sure, vote for whom you think is best. It will still be each of us that must change the most. Thank you, Physicus, for that comment. I enjoyed that, and wanted to read something from Valhalla. 5-6. Yes, you are correct. Both Obama and Trump presented themselves to be less hawkish, then turned around and went kill crazy. My sister would pronounce that Obama was a Muslim and forced the entire White House to say Muslim prayers 5 times a day. I told her she is ridiculous, that Obama killed 5 Muslims by drone strike before lunch every day, and she claimed that was just a show to throw people off. The fact is, when Obama was president, the right made absurd claims, including Trump himself, who was a birther, and now it is the left's turn to make absurd claims that Trump is a Russian stooge by the likes of Rachel Madcow. I think people are flippity crazy with their assertions and nuttiness. Assertions and nuttiness rule the day. I agree. And the last one I'm going to read from Eddie Evans. What is abrupt climate change? The term abrupt climate change describes changes in climate that occur over the span of years to decades compared to the human-caused changes in climate that are occurring over the time span of decades to centuries. I don't know. From ice cores, ocean sediments, tree rings, and other records of Earth's, maybe that was a Willy Wonka strike that reversed that. I don't know. From ice cores, ocean sediments, tree rings, and other records of Earth's past climate, scientists have found that changes in climate have occurred quickly in the past over the course of a decade. Very true. An example of an abrupt climate change event is the Younger Dryas, 12,000 years ago, period of abrupt cooling that interrupted a general warming trend as the Earth emerged from the last ice age. During the Younger Dryas period, average summertime temperatures in New England cooled by about 5 to 7 Fahrenheit or 3 to 4 C. This and other abrupt events have been linked to changes in the ocean circulation pattern known as thermohaline circulation. Union of Concerned Scientists. Just an interesting aside as to what abrupt climate change might be, but it looks like human-caused climate change is going to be as abrupt as other climate change events in the past, and maybe nothing like we've ever seen before, possibly and probably like nothing we've ever seen before. So ran across, actually I saw this posted on Facebook from Nicholas Humphrey. And this is from today, from The Guardian. Northern Marianas Islands survey damage from super typhoon Yutu. Not YouTube, but Yutu. The strongest storm to hit U.S. territory this year left Saipan, Tinian, and Rota looking like a small war just passed through. Residents of the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands are bracing for months without electricity or running water after the islands were slammed with the strongest storm to hit any part of the U.S. this year. Even after Super Typhoon Yutu had moved away from the U.S. territory in the Pacific, residents were warned by emergency management officials to stay indoors because downed power lines blocked roadways and winds were still strong enough to make driving dangerous. Gregorio Kilili Camacho Sablan, the Commonwealth's delegate to the U.S. Congress, said the territory will need significant help to recover from the storm, which he said injured several people. In a telephone interview with the Associated Press from Saipan, Sablan said there's a lot of damage and destruction. It's like a small war just passed through. Sablan said the entire island sustained damage, but there are areas that are worse than others. He's not been able to reach officials in the territory's neighboring islands of Tinian and Rota because phones and electricity are out. About 55,000 people live on the islands. It's going to take weeks probably to get electricity back to everybody, he said. Sablan said colleagues in Congress have offered help. He expected a presidential disaster declaration that would be put in place. The electricity on Saipan, the largest island in the Commonwealth, about 3,800 miles west of Hawaii, went out at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Resident Glenn Hunter said, "We probably won't have power for months," he said, recalling how it took 4 months to restore electricity after Typhoon Soudelor in 2015. Yet another Category 5 storm. How many have we seen this year? How many more will we see this year? This is starting to just get to be really regular, like every day. Like, ho hum, just another Category 5 typhoon or hurricane. Nothing to see here. Moving on to this article from Business Insider. That came out a couple days ago, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. From Peter Kotecki, October 15th, 2018. So many animals will go extinct in the next 50 years that it will take Earth at least 3 million years to recover, a study has found. The Earth is undergoing a mass extinction, which is caused by human activity that destroys habitats and kills off species. Sounds like we're the best. Yeah. In a new study, Danish researchers concluded that so many mammal species will go extinct in the next 50 years that the planet's evolutionary diversity won't recover for at least 3 million years. But how about them Dodgers? The scientists said that their findings could be used to help determine which endangered species are the biggest priorities for conservation efforts. Again, with the, oh, gosh, guys, we have to, which species are we going to save while everything is basically going under? All right, so getting into the article. The Earth may be entering its sixth mass extinction, an era in which the planet's environments change so much that most animal and plant species die out. The international, so how are you going to save certain species if all the species are dying? The International Union for Conservation of Nature predicts that 99.9% of critically endangered species and 67% of endangered species will be lost within the next 100 years. Okay, the 5 other times a mass extinction has occurred over the past 450 million years. Natural disasters were to blame, but now human activity is a natural disaster, is killing mammal species. In a study published Monday in the journal PNAS, scientists from Aarhus University in Denmark calculated how fast extinctions are happening and how long it would take for evolution to bring Earth back to the level of biodiversity it currently has. The scientists concluded that in a best-case scenario, nature will need 3 to 5 million years to get back to the level of biodiversity we have on Earth today. Returning to the Earth's animal kingdom was in before modern humans evolved would take 5 to 7 million years. Evolution can't keep up. Evolution is the planet's defense mechanism against the loss of biodiversity. As habitats and climates change, species that can't survive die, and new species slowly emerge. But it takes a long time for new species to fill the gaps, and that process is far slower than the rate at which humans are causing mammals to go extinct. For their calculations, the Aarhus University researchers used a database containing existing mammal species and mammals that already went extinct as humans spread across the planet. They combined the data with information about extinctions expected to come in the next 50 years and used advanced simulations of evolution to predict how long recovery would take. Their estimates are based on an optimistic assumption that people will eventually stop ruining habitats and causing species to die out, and the extinction rate will go back down, i.e., if humans die out or die way back. But even in the best case scenario, the timeline depends on how quickly mammals start recovering. If the extinction rate doesn't start falling for another 20 to 100 years, more species will likely disappear, causing greater diversity loss. The researchers noted that in their model, certain species were given more importance than others. Matt Davis, a paleontologist at Aarhus University who led the study, cited the shrew as an example. There are hundreds of species of shrew, so if 1 or 2 go extinct, that would not kill off all shrews on Earth. There are only 4 species of saber-toothed tigers on the planet, so when they all go extinct, many years of evolutionary history disappeared with them. Large mammals, or megafauna, such as giant sloths and saber-toothed tigers, which became extinct about 10,000 years ago, were highly evolutionarily distinct, Davis said in a press release. Since they had few close relatives, their extinctions meant that entire branches of Earth's evolutionary tree were chopped off. The research could help conservationists. Today, other large animals like the black rhino are facing extinction, as well as the white rhino. Asian elephants' chance of making it to the 22nd century is less than 33%, the study found. These elephants are one of only 2 remaining species from a group of mammals that once included mastodons and mammoths. We now live in a world that is becoming increasingly impoverished of large wild mammalian species. Jens Christian Svenning, an Aarhus University professor who researches megafauna, said in the press release. The few remaining giants, such as rhinos and elephants, are in danger of being wiped out very rapidly. He noted that the planet no longer boasts giant beavers, giant deer, or giant armadillos. Though the researchers' findings are dire, the scientists said their work could be used to figure out which endangered species are evolutionarily unique and which might help conservationists decide where to focus their efforts to prevent the most devastating extinctions. Where to start? And in other great news from the Trump administration, this is from today, or yesterday, from The Hill. Trump admin approves Arctic offshore oil drilling project off Alaska's coast. Of course they did. You think they're going to knock it down? Do you think they care? Of course they don't care. The Trump administration approved the company's plan, Abe Company's plan, Wednesday to drill for oil in the Arctic Ocean north of Alaska, the first time oil would be produced from federal waters in the Arctic. The approval from the Interior Department's Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is conditional, and Hillcorp Energy Company would still have to get other federal permits and abide by standards like restricting drilling seasons. At least they've got some boundaries there. Working with Alaska Native stakeholders, the Department of the Interior is following through on President Trump's promise of American energy dominance, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke said in a statement. American energy dominance is good for the economy, the environment, and our national security. Well, one of those is, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Responsibly developing other resources. Our resources in Alaska especially will allow us to use our energy diplomatically to aid our allies and check our adversaries. Well, yes. Got to have the last drop of oil. That makes America stronger, and because, the last country with the last drop of oil wins. That makes America stronger and more influential around the globe. The Alaska Liberty Project would not use a traditional mobile drilling rig like the ones common in the Gulf of Mexico and other offshore drilling areas. It would instead involve building a new 9-acre gravel artificial island about 5 miles off the coast to host the drilling. 4 other oil and gas producing islands are nearby in waters that the state controls. David Wilkins, Senior Vice President of Hillcorp's Alaska Operations, said the company is pleased with the administration's approval. All right. And everybody's happy. Beers all around, boys. We're drilling in the Arctic. Moving on. Maybe this will be inspiring to some. And this may be the last article of this video. I think that it will be, because it's late. It's already late. It's already been a long day. This is from Truth Out. How 5 climate activists shut off the equivalent of 15% of U.S. oil. Let's see how they did it. This is published October 23rd by Christine Banowitz. 2 years ago, 51-year-old poet Emily Johnson took a large pair of bolt cutters to a length of chain, locked around the manual shutoff valve at the Enbridge Incorporated pipeline facility in Clearwater County, Minnesota. As part of a coordinated action on October 11th, 2016, with activists in 3 other states, all of whom would shortly be known as the Valve Turners. Johnson intended to stop the flow of oil from Canada's tar sands into the United States. Activist and retired attorney Annette Clapstein joined Johnson in the action in Clearwater, and before Johnson snapped the cutters through the chain, their collaborator, Benjamin Yoldersma, called Enbridge as a safety precaution to inform the corporation of their intention to close the pipeline minutes later. Once the chain was removed, Johnson took the yellow-orange shutoff valve into her hands, with Clapstein looking on and Yoldersma filming. She turned the wheel. They engaged in their action after several activists in Canada, most of them indigenous, did the same thing. They chose the timing in order to honor the request for days of action and prayer from Standing Rock. And since then, pipeline fighters' use of creative tactics has only grown. Actions by First Nations organizers played a major role this year in halting the expansion of the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain oil pipeline. Around the same time, activists protesting the Mountain Valley Pipeline crouched under tarps and tree platforms in the proposed pipeline's path along West Virginia's border. Just last Friday, water protectors opposed to Energy Transfer Partners' Bayou Bridge Pipeline in Louisiana locked themselves to the front gates of the CEO's mansion in Dallas. Like the rest of the Valve Turners, Johnson, who is also the co-founder of the environmental group 350 Seattle, was arrested in Clearwater. She requested a trial by jury. Last week she finally got one, or rather, she would have if Minnesota Judge Robert Tiffany had not dismissed all charges brought against her, Clapstein and Yoldersma, on the second day of litigation. According to Lauren Regan, lead attorney on the case and executive director of the Civil Liberties Defense Center, the judgment was highly unusual, following what she described in a phone interview with Truthout as a perfunctory motion for acquittal. In my 20 years of doing activist defense, I've never had a judge grant one, she said. But then, the proceedings had already been unusual. Unlike judges presiding over the Valve Turners cases in Montana, North Dakota, and Washington, Judge Tiffany had allowed the activists to argue their case on the grounds of what's known as the necessity defense. The textbook example of a necessity case is you have a choice between life or death, said Regan, and that state of emergency or peril justifies you breaking the law. For example, someone who breaks into a burning building in order to save somebody locked inside might invoke the necessity defense if charged afterward with trespassing. It reflects the urgency with which activists view their causes, said Regan. According to the Valve Turners, halting the extraction and burning of tar sands couldn't be more urgent. In a study published just 6 months before the direct action, scientists found the Alberta tar sands operation to be one of the most prolific sources of air pollution in North America, often exceeding the daily emissions of the entire greater Toronto metro area. Tar sands are also among the very dirtiest of fossil fuels, producing roughly 14% more greenhouse gases than the average oil used in the US. Processing all of the available Alberta tar sands alone would result in a global temperature rise of an estimated additional 0.4 degrees Celsius, nearly half of the anthropogenic warming seen to date. According to the hundreds of independent scientists who compiled the 2014 National Climate Assessment, children, the elderly, the sick, the poor are among those most vulnerable to climate change-related negative impacts, which will increase substantially unless global emissions are greatly reduced. This is a really good precedent, right? This is a great precedent for taking some action, for taking some direct action. Since this has already been ruled in favor of this could mean a lot or nothing at all. In the light of these findings, the Valve Turners' actions can be understood as an attempt to rescue the vulnerable populations from the burning building of our planet's ever hotter climate. And when that building starts to burn, man, people will be doing all kinds of good things. The attorneys on Johnson's case had prepared evidence to this effect, largely in the form of expert testimony from scientists like James Hansen, former petroleum industry experts like Anthony Ingraffia, and authorities on political science like Lawrence Lessig of Harvard Law. However, according to Kelsey Skaggs, executive director for the Climate Defense Project, who also served as a trial attorney on the case, the judge's early dismissal meant that they were not given the opportunity to present this defense. In a phone interview with Truthout, Skaggs admitted that although an acquittal is certainly a legal victory, the more promising outcome to her mind was the precedent this case set in the terms of the recent anti-protest laws that have swept state legislatures across the country. What we saw in court was the law wasn't a good fit for the nonviolent direct action that our clients actually did. It suggests that prosecutors using these laws may be overreaching. However powerful this precedent, the early acquittal was also a loss in some ways. The Valve Turners and expert witnesses had been prepared to speak directly to a jury composed of Minnesota residents from mostly rural communities, said Regan. A lot of them earn their incomes from pipelines or pipeline-affiliated work. To be able to sit in a room with 12 or 13 of them for a couple of days and actually build some trust is a really powerful way to reach across the aisles and engage in dialogue with people who aren't with the choir, so to speak. Truthout caught up with the Valve Turner Emily Johnson to talk about the case and necessity of direct action in this moment of climate crisis. I don't think that I'm going to read this whole interview here. I just wanted to read the overview of what was happening. So I'm going to link this below, and I think I'm going to call this the end of the video because that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.